Hey guys, tonight we're taking a very slow, very gentle stroll back in time, all the way to the Bronze Age. Imagine, if you will, the soft glow of a low sun filtering through the entrance of a simple, sun-baked structure. The air is warm, thick with the scent of dry earth and something subtly mineral. You're not in a bustling city, nor a grand palace. No, you're in a quiet, unassuming workshop, perhaps somewhere along the Fertile Crescent, or maybe on the windswept plains of ancient Europe, or even tucked away in a village in the far reaches of Asia. This isn't a place of heroic battles or dramatic pronouncements. This is a place of hands, and earth, and quiet creation. You might hear the distant bleating of sheep, the gentle hum of insects, or the soft rustle of dry grasses in a light breeze. It's a calm, rhythmic existence, far removed from the hustle and bustle of, well, anything that isn't a small, self-sufficient community. And honestly, you probably wouldn't survive a week out here with your modern sensibilities. But tonight, we're just visiting, and visiting quietly. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're listening from somewhere particularly interesting, or at a peculiar hour, drop a comment below and let us know your location and the time. It's always fun to see how far these sleepy stories travel. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You, in this ancient scene, are a potter, not a king, not a warrior, not even a celebrated bard, just a potter. And your world, for much of the day, revolves around clay. The quiet life of a potter in the Bronze Age was one of patience, observation, and an intimate understanding of the very ground beneath your feet. You wouldn't just order clay from some online store, obviously. No, your connection to your raw material was far more direct, far more physical. Imagine yourself, then, waking with the sun, the air still cool and crisp. Your muscles, accustomed to labor, feel a familiar readiness. Your day isn't dictated by clocks or schedules, but by the rhythm of nature and the demands of your craft. You might have a simple breakfast of gruel or dried fruit, perhaps some stale bread, made by someone else in the community, for everyone has their role. Then, you step out, not to a factory, but to the very earth that will provide your livelihood. Your hands, already calloused and strong, are ready for the quiet work ahead. This is a life defined by the earth, shaped by the sun, and finished by fire. The mainstream historical fact here is that pottery was absolutely essential for storing food, water, and seeds, playing a vital role in early agricultural societies and the development of settled communities. Without durable vessels, managing surpluses, especially grain, would have been nearly impossible, thereby limiting population growth and stability. A quirky tidbit, however, is that some early pottery was so porous that it would sweat water, keeping the contents inside cool through evaporative cooling, an ancient form of refrigeration that worked quite well in arid climates, and probably saved many a Bronze Age snack from spoiling. Historians still argue whether the invention of pottery was a singular, spontaneous discovery or a gradual, parallel development across various cultures in response to similar needs for food storage. But for you, the potter, it's just the earth waiting. Your first task, once the sun has truly begun its ascent, is to find the clay. You're not just digging anywhere, mind you. You've learned, through generations of trial and error, precisely where the good stuff lies. It's often near riverbanks, in floodplains where fine sediments have settled, or in ancient lake beds that have long since dried up. You grab your rudimentary tools, perhaps a digging stick, reinforced with a fire-hardened tip, or a simple shovel made from an animal scapula. The earth here is often rich with pockets of a particular kind of soil, a fine, plastic earth that, when wet, becomes wonderfully malleable. You know the exact color, the subtle sheen when it's damp, and the way it feels underfoot. It's not just dirt, it's a living material, waiting to be transformed. You might spend hours, slowly, methodically excavating the clay. It's hard work, no doubt about it. The sun beats down, and the dust, though fine, rises with every stroke of your tool. You pause often, wiping sweat from your brow, listening to the quiet sounds of the world around you. There's a certain meditative quality to this physical labor, a connection to the earth that modern life rarely affords. You're not rushing. There's no deadline, no boss breathing down your neck. just the silent expectation of the village for the pots you will eventually produce. The clay you dig is rarely pure. It's mixed with pebbles, roots, organic matter, and various grit. This isn't a problem for you. It's just the raw state of your material. You're looking for a specific quality, a certain plasticity. Too sandy, and it won't hold together. Too sticky, and it will crack when dried. It's a delicate balance, something you feel in your hands more than you measure with tools. You learn to read the earth, to understand its subtle variations. Once you've dug out a sizable quantity, perhaps a large basketful, you begin the process of transportation. You might carry it back to your workshop yourself, a heavy, dusty burden on your back, or perhaps you have the aid of a beast of burden, a donkey or an ox, if your community is prosperous enough. The journey back is slow, your steps measured, each footfall a reminder of the raw material you've just wrestled from the ground. Back at your workshop, the next stage of preparation begins. This is where the clay starts its transformation from simple earth to something truly workable. You'll spread it out on a prepared surface, perhaps a large, flat stone or a dedicated patch of pounded earth. The mainstream historical fact here is that the selection of specific clay sources was paramount for ancient potters, as the geological composition of the clay directly influenced the strength, durability, and firing characteristics of the final product. Different regions developed distinct pottery traditions based on the unique clays available to them. A quirky tidbit: some ancient potters, especially in areas with very sandy soil, would intentionally add fine animal dung to their clay mixture. It sounds gross, I know, but the fibers in the dung acted as a binder, preventing cracks during drying and firing, and then burned out in the kiln, leaving tiny pores that actually made the pots lighter and, in some cases, more resistant to thermal shock. So, yes, you might be needing a bit of dried, organic matter into your future drinking cup. Historians still argue whether the earliest pottery-making communities had a systematic geological knowledge of clay deposits, or if their discoveries were purely accidental, born from repeated trial and error over generations. But for you, the Bronze Age potter, it's just another day at the office, or rather, the digging site. Once the raw clay is brought back to the workshop, perhaps laid out on that flat stone or beaten earth patch, the true work of transformation begins, kneading the earth. This isn't like kneading dough for bread, though there's a similar rhythmic, almost hypnotic quality to it. This is about purification and homogenization. You'll begin by breaking up the larger clumps of clay, removing any obvious pebbles, sticks, or other impurities you might have missed during excavation. It's a meticulous process, done by hand, your fingers searching for any foreign object that could cause a crack or flaw in the final pot. You might even use a simple sieve made of woven reeds or animal sinew to strain out the finer grit, though often, the clay is simply spread thin and picked through. Then comes the real kneading, also known as wedging. Imagine yourself standing over a large lump of clay, perhaps the size of a small boulder. You take a deep breath, and with your strong forearms, you begin to press, fold, and push the clay, much like a baker. But instead of developing gluten, you're trying to achieve two crucial things. First, to remove any trapped air bubbles, which can cause pots to explode in the kiln, a truly catastrophic event for a Bronze Age potter. And second, to ensure an even distribution of moisture throughout the entire mass. If one part is wetter than another, it will dry at a different rate, leading to cracks. It's a dance between force and finesse. You might use a method called bull's head wedging, where you repeatedly cut the clay with a wire or string, stack the pieces, and then push and fold, creating a spiraling pattern that helps to eliminate air and align the clay particles. Or perhaps a simpler, more intuitive method, working the clay like a giant ball, constantly folding and pushing it back on itself. The feeling of the clay under your hands is central to this process. It starts stiff, perhaps a little crumbly, then slowly, with each fold and press, it becomes smoother, more plastic, almost buttery. You feel its resistance, its willingness to yield, and you learn to anticipate its behavior. It's a full-body workout, arms, shoulders, and even your core engaged in the steady, repetitive motion. The air in the workshop fills with the faint, earthy scent of the clay, a smell that will become deeply comforting and familiar to you. This isn't a task you rush. It requires patience, focus, and a kind of quiet determination. You're not just preparing clay, you're preparing yourself, settling into the rhythm of creation. You might work like this for hours, until the clay is perfectly uniform, a smooth, dense lump ready for shaping. You'll know it's ready when it has a consistent, velvety texture, and when you cut a piece and hold it up, you can see a perfect, bubble-free cross-section. The mainstream historical fact here is that proper clay preparation, including wedging to remove air bubbles and achieve uniform consistency, was a fundamental step in pottery production across all ancient civilizations, directly impacting the success rate of firing and the quality of finished vessels. A quirky tidbit is that some ancient potters would actually stomp on large piles of clay with their bare feet to wedge it, especially when preparing huge batches. Imagine the squishy, earthy sensation between your toes, a truly sensory experience of ancient craftsmanship. Historians still argue whether the invention of specific wedging techniques, like the bull's head method, emerged independently in different regions or diffused along early trade routes, indicating a cross-cultural sharing of specialized ceramic knowledge. But for you, the Bronze Age potter, it's just the sound of your own breathing, the soft thump-thump-thump of the clay, and the slow, steady transformation of earth into potential. With your clay now perfectly wedged, smooth, and free of air bubbles, you turn to the actual shaping. For much of the Bronze Age, especially in earlier periods and for everyday utilitarian items, the simple hand-building techniques were the bedrock of pottery creation. Forget the spinning wheel for a moment. Your hands are your primary tools, guided by instinct and millennia of inherited knowledge. You might begin with the pinch pot method, one of the most ancient and intimate ways to form a vessel. You take a lump of that beautifully prepared clay, perhaps the size of a small melon, and gently, with your thumbs, you begin to press into its center. Your fingers on the outside support the growing walls as your thumbs push outwards. It's a slow, contemplative process. You rotate the clay in your palm, constantly thinning the walls, coaxing the material upwards and outwards into a simple bowl or cup shape. You feel the clay respond to your touch, the subtle give and resistance as it takes on form. There's a certain satisfaction in seeing a vessel emerge from a formless lump, simply through the pressure of your own hands. This method yields charmingly irregular, organic shapes, each one unique, bearing the clear imprint of its maker. They might not be perfectly symmetrical, but they possess a rustic beauty and a tangible connection to the human hand. Or perhaps you're making something a bit larger, a storage jar or a cooking pot. For this, you'd likely turn to the coil method. This involves rolling out long, snake-like ropes of clay, coils, of a consistent thickness. You start with a flat base, perhaps a thick pancake of clay cut to shape. Then, one by one, you begin to attach the coils to the rim of the base, carefully pressing them into place. With each successive coil, you build the walls of your pot higher. The trick here is to ensure each coil is firmly joined to the one below it, and to smooth the joints both inside and out. You might use a damp sponge or a simple piece of leather to help blend the coils seamlessly, obliterating any trace of the individual snakes. This blending is crucial for strength. A poorly joined coil will inevitably lead to a crack during drying or firing. Imagine the focused calm of this work. Your breath is steady, your movements deliberate. The sun continues its journey across the sky, casting ever longer shadows. The simple sounds of the village are muffled by your concentration. You are entirely absorbed in the tactile experience of the clay, its coolness, its pliability, its slow transformation under your touch. There's no distraction here, no social media feeds to scroll, just the pure, unadulterated act of creation. It's a very Zen experience, long before anyone ever uttered the word Zen. You might even find yourself humming a quiet tune, a repetitive melody that mirrors the repetitive action of your hands. The mainstream historical fact is that hand-building techniques, particularly pinching and coiling, predate the invention of the potter's wheel by millennia and remained the dominant method for producing pottery in many cultures well into the Bronze Age and beyond, especially for large storage vessels or ceremonial pieces where absolute symmetry was less important than robust construction. A quirky tidbit you might observe is how some potters in humid environments would carefully cover their work with damp cloths, or even bury it slightly in sand to slow down the drying process between adding coils. preventing the lower sections from drying too quickly and cracking before the upper sections were built up. This patience was key. Historians still argue whether the invention of hand-building techniques arose independently in multiple regions due to the inherent properties of clay, or if the basic principles diffused from a single point of origin as early human populations spread across the globe. But for you, the Bronze Age potter, it's just the steady, rhythmic press of your fingers, forming earth into something useful. As your skills honed with the simpler pinch pots, you naturally progressed to crafting larger, more sophisticated vessels using coil and slab pots. These techniques allowed for greater volume and more controlled shapes, essential for the diverse needs of your Bronze Age community. Imagine you're creating a substantial storage jar, perhaps for grain or olive oil. You've already mastered the art of rolling out those perfectly uniform coils, not too thick, not too thin, just right. You begin with a solid, flat base, perhaps a thick, round slab of clay that you've cut from a larger sheet. This base is your foundation, literally. You carefully smooth its edges, making sure it's stable. Then, you start adding your coils, one by one. You place the first coil around the perimeter of the base, gently pressing it down to create a strong bond. But the magic isn't just in placing them. It's in the careful, rhythmic blending. You use your thumb and forefinger to smudge the clay upwards from the lower coil into the upper one, erasing the seam. On the outside, you might use a smooth stone or a piece of bone as a rib, gently scraping and pressing to further integrate the coils, creating a seamless, sturdy wall. This isn't just about aesthetics, it's about structural integrity. A poorly joined coil is an invitation for cracks when the pot dries, or, worse, when it's fired. As you build higher, you can subtly change the angle of each coil to create the desired shape of the pot, widening for a belly, narrowing for a neck, or flaring for a rim. It's a bit like sculpting, but with an underlying geometric precision born of experience. You might take breaks, covering the unfinished pot with a damp cloth to prevent the lower coils from drying out too quickly while you prepare more clay or simply rest your hands. This slow, deliberate pace is crucial. Rushing would invite disaster. You learn to listen to the clay, to feel its moisture content, to know when it's ready for the next layer. Sometimes, for flatter, more angular forms like trays or rectangular storage boxes, you might use the slab method. This involves rolling out large, even sheets of clay, much like pastry dough. You cut these slabs to precise dimensions, perhaps using a straight stick as a guide. Then, you join them together at the edges, scoring and slipping the clay, applying a thin, creamy mixture of clay and water to ensure a strong bond. It's like constructing a small building, brick by clay brick, but with far more finesse. The joints are then carefully smoothed, again ensuring strength and a clean finish. This allows for a more architectural approach to pottery, yielding vessels with crisp lines and distinct angles, a contrast to the organic flow of coiled forms. The mainstream historical fact here is that coil and slab building methods were incredibly versatile, enabling ancient potters to create a vast array of vessels, from massive storage jars used to hold hundreds of liters of liquid or grain, to specialized cooking pots and even architectural elements like bricks or tiles, all long before the widespread adoption of the potter's wheel. A quirky tidbit is that some ancient potters would actually incorporate bits of broken, previously fired pottery, called grog or shamat, into their clay mix for large coiled pots. This grog acted as a temper, reducing shrinkage and preventing cracks, making the massive vessels less prone to collapse during the arduous drying and firing processes. It was an early form of recycling. Historians still argue whether the development of specific decorative patterns found on coil-built pottery was purely aesthetic or if some symbols carried deeper, perhaps ritualistic or ownership, meanings passed down through generations of potters within a community. But for you, the Bronze Age potter, it's just the steady, rhythmic pressure of your hands, coaxing the earth into a shape that will serve your community for generations. While hand building provided the foundation, the potter's wheel represented a monumental leap forward in ceramic technology, a silent revolution that transformed pottery production in many Bronze Age societies. Imagine the first time you laid eyes on such a device. It wouldn't be the sophisticated, electrically powered wheel of today, but a simple, often heavy, stone or wooden disc pivoted on a central point. Perhaps it was spun by an assistant, or perhaps you. The potter used your foot to kick a lower wheel, or even a stick to spin a top wheel, setting it in motion. The initial experience of using the wheel is undoubtedly humbling. Your first attempts would likely result in wobbling, collapsing mounds of clay, rather than graceful vessels. It takes immense practice, patience, and a delicate touch to master. But once you begin to get the hang of it, the sensation is truly transformative. The clay, under your hands, no longer just sits there waiting to be pushed. It actively spins, opening up new possibilities for symmetry and speed. You would start by firmly centering a lump of clay directly on the wheel head. This is the first, and arguably most crucial, step. If the clay isn't perfectly centered, it will wobble, making it impossible to work with. You apply steady pressure with your hands, leaning into the spinning clay, feeling it resist, then slowly, begrudgingly, yield to your force until it spins smoothly, perfectly aligned with the axis of the wheel. It's a battle of wills, really, between your intention and the clay's inertia, but one you learn to win with a combination of strength and subtle control. As the wheel spins, you use your wetted hands to pull the clay upwards, allowing the centrifugal force to assist you in shaping the walls. The clay rises, seemingly effortlessly, from a flat disc into a hollow cylinder. You can then gently press outwards to widen the form, or push inwards to narrow the neck. The beauty of the wheel lies in its ability to create perfectly symmetrical, uniform vessels with incredible speed compared to hand building. This wasn't just about aesthetics, it was about efficiency. More pots could be made in less time, leading to greater output and, potentially, more trade. The mainstream historical fact is that the invention and widespread adoption of the potter's wheel in various regions during the Bronze Age significantly industrialized pottery production, leading to greater standardization of forms, increased output, and the emergence of specialized potters who could dedicate themselves solely to this craft. A quirky tidbit is that early potters' wheels, particularly in the Near East, were often slow wheels, or tournettes, turned by hand or foot rather than momentum, primarily used for trimming and decorating rather than true throwing. The fast wheel, capable of generating significant centrifugal force, came later. Historians still argue whether the potter's wheel was independently invented in multiple centers, like Mesopotamia and China, or if the technology diffused gradually across continents through ancient trade networks, much like ideas for bronze metallurgy. But for you, the Bronze Age potter, it's the mesmerizing spin of the wheel, a hum of innovation in the quiet workshop. Now that you've wrestled with the fundamental concept of the spinning wheel and achieved some semblance of control, the true meditative dance of shaping the vessel begins. This is where the clay truly seems to come alive under your touch, responding to every subtle pressure, every gentle nudge. With the lump of clay perfectly centered and spinning smoothly, your hands become extensions of your will, guiding the earth into form. You begin by using your wetted hands to apply pressure, first gently forcing the clay into a low, wide dome, then pushing down through the center to create an opening. This is called coning up and down, a crucial step that further refines the clay's consistency and ensures a strong, even structure. It feels like pushing against a firm, spinning sponge, but one that gradually softens and stretches. Once you've opened the center, you then begin to draw up the walls. You place one hand inside the opening and the other on the outside, directly opposite. With gentle, continuous pressure, you slowly, steadily, pull the clay upwards. As the wheel spins, the clay rises between your fingers, thinning and lengthening with each pass. This process is remarkably sensitive. Too much pressure, and the wall might collapse. Too little, and it won't rise. You learn to breathe with the clay, to feel its subtle wobbles, and to correct them with a slight shift of your hands. The water you use on your hands is essential. It acts as a lubricant, allowing your fingers to glide over the spinning clay without tearing it, and it keeps the clay moist and pliable. You'll have a small bowl of water nearby, constantly re-wetting your hands, feeling the cool, slick sensation as you work. The rhythmic whir-whir-whir of the wheel, the soft squelch of wet clay, and the gentle sounds of your own breathing create an almost hypnotic atmosphere. Time seems to slow down, and your focus becomes absolute. You're not thinking about tomorrow's tasks or yesterday's worries. You are entirely in this moment, consumed by the feel of the clay, the subtle changes in its form, and the silent conversation between your hands and the spinning earth. You might be aiming for a specific shape, a narrow-necked jug, a wide-mouthed bowl, or a tall storage amphora. Your mind holds the image, and your hands translate it into reality, a testament to the power of human ingenuity and dexterity. It's a remarkable feat of coordination, especially considering you're doing this without modern guides or sophisticated tools, relying purely on touch and trained intuition. And sometimes, despite your best efforts, a pot might just decide it wants to become a pancake. It happens. You just collect the clay, re-wedge it, and try again. No biggie. The mainstream historical fact is that the development of throwing techniques on the fast potter's wheel allowed for the production of highly standardized, thin-walled, and symmetrical pottery forms, significantly increasing the efficiency and scale of ceramic production, a hallmark of increasingly complex Bronze Age societies. A quirky tidbit is that some ancient potters used simple tools made from gourds, shells, or even broken bits of pottery to refine the shape of their vessels, scraping and smoothing the surface as the wheel spun, adding a finishing touch that speaks volumes about their dedication to craftsmanship. Historians still argue whether the precise relationship between the potter's body posture and the mechanics of the wheel allowed for ergonomic efficiencies that contributed to the specialization of potters in Bronze Age communities, or if such considerations were purely intuitive. But for you, the Bronze Age potter, it's the quiet satisfaction of watching a form emerge from chaos, a testament to steady hands and a calm mind. With the basic form of your vessel spinning perfectly on the wheel, your next task is to add decorations. This isn't about flashy, over-the-top embellishments. Rather, it's about subtle patterns and textures that add character and beauty to your functional creations. Think of it as the Bronze Age equivalent of adding a little flair to your everyday items. One common method for decoration was incising or carving into the wet clay. As the wheel continues its slow spin, you might take a simple tool, perhaps a sharpened stick, a piece of bone, or even your fingernail, and gently press patterns into the surface. These could be simple parallel lines, wavy designs mimicking water, or geometric shapes like triangles and zigzags. The beauty lies in the regularity and repetition, born from the spinning motion of the wheel. Imagine a smooth, rhythmic scratching sound as the tool meets the clay, a soft whisper that accompanies your focused movements. Each line is precise, a testament to your steady hand and keen eye. You might even create bands of these patterns, wrapping around the pot like ancient ribbons. Another technique, particularly effective for adding contrasting colors, was the use of slip. Slip is essentially very thin, watery clay, often made from a different type of clay that fires to a different color. You might apply a coat of light-colored slip over a dark clay body, or vice versa. Once the slip dries to a leathery hardness, you could then use your incising tool to sgraffito the surface, scratching away parts of the slip to reveal the contrasting color of the clay beneath. This creates a striking two-tone effect, adding depth and visual interest without needing complex paints or glazes. Perhaps you create intricate spirals or stylized animal motifs this way, telling a silent story on the surface of the pot. Sometimes, for a more tactile finish, you might use impress decorations. This involves pressing objects into the soft clay to leave an impression. You might use the edge of a shell, a piece of cord wrapped around a stick, or even your fingertip to create a series of dots or small indentations. Imagine the subtle texture this adds, something that feels interesting when you run your fingers over it. Or perhaps you use a stamp, carved from wood or bone, to repeat a specific motif around the rim of a bowl. It's a remarkably calming process, this repetitive motion of impressing or incising, a rhythm that lulls you into a state of quiet concentration. You're not just making a pot, you're imbuing it with a piece of your artistic spirit, however humble. And sometimes, you might accidentally leave a fingerprint. Consider that a signature, not a mistake. The mainstream historical fact here is that decorative elements on Bronze Age pottery, from simple incised lines to more complex painted or slipped designs, were not merely aesthetic but often served to identify the potter's workshop, the vessel's origin, or even its intended use, acting as a form of early branding or cultural marker. A quirky tidbit is that some ancient cultures, particularly in parts of Africa, would use actual grains of corn or seeds pressed into the wet clay as a decorative element, which would then burn out during firing, leaving behind a subtle, organic pattern on the finished surface, a testament to agricultural life. Historians still argue whether certain recurring geometric patterns found on Bronze Age pottery held symbolic or ritualistic meaning, or if they were purely decorative motifs born from the technical limitations and possibilities of the pottery-making process. But for you, the Bronze Age potter, it's just the quiet satisfaction of seeing your functional piece slowly transform into something beautiful, one steady hand movement at a time. Once your beautifully decorated pot is shaped and finished on the wheel, or painstakingly hand-built, it enters a critical, yet utterly passive phase, drying the pottery. This might sound simple, but it's anything but. For a Bronze Age potter, this slow, deliberate process is fraught with unseen dangers. Rush it, and your hours of work can literally crack before your eyes. You carefully lift the still soft, greenware pot from the wheel head, or from its building surface, and transport it to a designated drying area. This area is usually indoors, or at least under a protective overhang, shielded from direct sunlight and strong drafts. Why? Because rapid, uneven drying is the enemy of raw clay. If one part of the pot dries faster than another, say, the rim dries while the base remains wet, the different rates of shrinkage will pull the clay apart, resulting in unsightly and often fatal cracks. Imagine the slow, frustrating heartbreak of finding a long, jagged crack running down the side of a pot you've spent hours perfecting. So, you learn patience. You place your pots on a bed of dry straw, or perhaps on shelves made of reeds or woven mats, allowing air to circulate evenly around them. You might even cover them loosely with a piece of cloth to slow down the drying process, especially if the air is particularly dry or windy. This allows the water within the clay to evaporate slowly and uniformly, shrinking the pot gradually and gently. As the water leaves, the clay particles draw closer together, and the pot becomes lighter and increasingly brittle. You'll develop an innate sense of when a pot is leather-hard, firm enough to handle without deforming, but still damp enough to be carved or trimmed. Then comes bone dry, when all the physical water has evaporated, and the pot feels light, chalky, and extremely fragile. This is the stage just before firing. It's so delicate that a slight bump, or even a sudden gust of wind, could shatter it. You move among your drying wares with the utmost care, like a ghost, lest you disturb their silent transformation. It's a bit like watching a baby sleep. You don't want to wake it or disturb its crucial development. You might hum a quiet tune, the sound barely audible over the gentle creaks of the drying wood in your workshop. The mainstream historical fact here is that the careful, controlled drying of pottery is a fundamental step in ceramics, directly impacting the success of subsequent firing. Inadequate drying is a primary cause of breakage, a truth that held as much for Bronze Age potters as it does for modern ones. A quirky tidbit is that some ancient potters, especially in very arid regions, would actually bury their bone-dry pots in warm sand, or even ashes from a dying fire for a period, believing this gradual, consistent warmth would further remove any lingering moisture and strengthen the clay before the intense heat of the kiln. Historians still argue whether the subtle differences in clay composition from region to region necessitated varying drying techniques, contributing to the diversity of early pottery styles and survival rates. But for you, the Bronze Age potter, it's the quiet contemplation of your creations, slowly, silently hardening, preparing for the fire to come. With your pots now bone-dry, light, and astonishingly fragile, the next monumental step in their transformation is the firing. This means you need to prepare the kiln. For a Bronze Age potter, a kiln wasn't a sophisticated, temperature-controlled electric furnace. It was a humble, yet remarkably effective, structure built from the very earth you understand so well. You'd typically start by digging a pit, or utilizing a natural depression in the ground. This pit forms the firing chamber. Above this pit, you would construct a simple dome or a beehive-shaped structure from clay, bricks, or even large stones, sometimes reinforced with a layer of insulating mud. This dome would have a small opening at the top, acting as a chimney, and perhaps another opening at the bottom, or a separate stokehole, where you would feed the fuel. It's a bit like building a very specific, temporary oven, perfectly designed to hold intense heat. Imagine yourself carefully shaping the raw clay into bricks for the dome, allowing them to dry in the sun, then meticulously stacking them, sealing the gaps with more mud. It's a low-tech marvel, built with an intuitive understanding of heat flow and material science. The fuel for your kiln would be readily available: wood, dried brush, straw, or even dried animal dung. You'd gather large quantities of it, knowing that the firing process would demand a sustained, intense heat for many hours. There's a quiet determination in this gathering, a premonition of the effort and watchfulness to come. You might also prepare a layer of sand or small pebbles at the bottom of the firing chamber to help distribute the heat evenly and prevent the pots from sticking to the ground. Once the kiln structure is complete, the next delicate phase is loading the kiln. This isn't just about throwing your pots in. You need to arrange them carefully, maximizing the space without allowing the pots to touch each other too much, or to touch the sides of the kiln where the heat might be uneven. You stack them, often nested one inside another where sizes permit, or using small clay supports to keep them separate and allow the flames and hot air to circulate freely. Think of it as a spatial puzzle, where every piece is incredibly valuable and delicate. You might also place larger, sturdier pots at the bottom, where the heat will be most intense, and smaller, more fragile ones towards the top. It's a moment of quiet trepidation as you place all your hard work into the belly of the beast, hoping for its successful transformation. The mainstream historical fact is that early kilns, often simple updraft or pit kilns, were essential for reaching temperatures high enough to vitrify clay, transforming fragile greenware into durable, waterproof pottery, and represented a significant technological advancement over open-fire methods. A quirky tidbit is that some Bronze Age potters would deliberately place certain types of plant materials, like specific leaves or bark, into the kiln with the pots, believing the smoke or ash would impart unique colors or patterns to the finished ware. It was an early, natural form of glazing or surface decoration. Historians still argue whether the design evolution of early kilns was primarily driven by the availability of specific local materials or by a shared understanding of optimal heat distribution principles across disparate ancient cultures. But for you, the Bronze Age potter, it's just the slow, careful arrangement of your fragile creations, anticipating the inferno that will harden them. The kiln is loaded, the pots nestled within, silent and waiting. Now comes the firing process, perhaps the most critical and nerve-wracking stage of all. This is where your tireless effort, your intimate knowledge of clay, and your understanding of fire truly culminate. You begin by gently stoking a small fire at the entrance of the kiln or in the stokehole beneath. The initial heat is low and gradual, designed to slowly raise the temperature inside the chamber, driving off any remaining trace moisture that the air drying couldn't eliminate. This is crucial. If the heat rises too quickly, the trapped water can turn to steam explosively, shattering your hard-won pots into 1,000 pieces. You might sit by the kiln for hours, perhaps through the night, watching the subtle changes. The smoke at first will be thick and white, laden with moisture. Gradually, as the temperature rises and the organic matter in the clay burns off, it will thin and become more transparent. You learn to read the smoke, to feel the heat radiating from the clay walls of the kiln, to listen to the subtle crackling sounds from within. This isn't a science with precise thermometers. It's an art of observation, intuition, and experience. As the hours pass, you steadily increase the fuel, feeding more wood or brush into the hungry flames. The fire grows hotter, turning the interior of the kiln into a glowing inferno. The clay pots inside, previously dull and brittle, begin to change. They reach what potters call red heat, then orange heat, and eventually, if you're successful, white heat. This is when the magic happens. The silica and other minerals within the clay begin to vitrify, or turn glass-like, fusing together to create a dense, strong, and waterproof material. This transformation is irreversible, a true alchemy of earth and fire. The specific temperature you aim for depends on the clay, some fire lower, some higher, and you know this from generations of trial and error. Maintaining the heat for the required duration is exhausting work. You constantly feed the fire, adjusting airflow, ensuring a consistent temperature throughout the kiln. Your face is probably streaked with ash, your eyes red from the smoke and the glare of the flames. It's a lonely vigil, often done at night when the cooler air helps draw the heat more efficiently through the kiln. You might even have a simple drum or a stringed instrument to keep yourself awake, playing soft, repetitive rhythms into the quiet darkness, or simply humming a repetitive tune. The mainstream historical fact here is that firing pottery to high temperatures in controlled environments like kilns was a revolutionary step in ancient technology, enabling the creation of durable, non-porous vessels that were vastly superior to earlier, unfired or low-fired ceramics, facilitating better food storage and cooking. A quirky tidbit is that some ancient kilns, particularly those in areas with specific mineral deposits, would accidentally, or sometimes intentionally, produce a naturally occurring ash glaze on the pots, where wood ash would melt and adhere to the ceramic surface, creating a subtle, often shimmering, glass-like coating. Historians still argue whether early potters understood the precise chemical reactions occurring during firing, or if their successful firings were the result of extensive empirical knowledge passed down through generations, leading to regional firing variations. But for you, the Bronze Age potter, it's the quiet vigil by the glowing kiln, the anticipation building with every passing hour. After what feels like an eternity of watchful waiting, the fire finally begins to die down. You cease feeding the kiln, allowing the embers to slowly cool and the temperature inside to gradually drop. This cooling period is just as crucial as the heating. If the pots are exposed to cold air too quickly, the sudden thermal shock can cause them to crack or even shatter, undoing all your hard work. You learn patience, waiting hours, sometimes even a full day and night, before daring to disturb the kiln. Finally, with the air cool and the kiln no longer radiating intense heat, comes the moment of truth, unloading the kiln. You approach the structure with a mixture of anticipation and trepidation. You carefully begin to dismantle the temporary door, or perhaps some of the upper bricks of the dome. The air that rushes out is still warm, carrying the faint, smoky scent of fired clay. As the interior becomes visible, you peer inside, searching for the first glimpse of your creations. The sight is always a revelation. What went in as fragile, bone-dry earth now emerges as something entirely new, strong, resonant, and transformed by fire. The colors might have deepened, reds becoming richer, yellows turning to warm ochres. Any accidental ash glazes from the firing might shimmer subtly on the surfaces. You carefully, one by one, reach in and lift out your finished pots. The feel is different now. They are solid, heavier in a satisfying way, and when you tap them gently, they produce a clear, ringing sound, a testament to their vitrification. It's like magic, truly, from soft mud to hard, durable stone. You inspect each piece, looking for flaws. Are there any cracks? Any imperfections? Most of the time, your careful preparation and firing will have paid off. There might be a few losses, a pot that cracked during cooling, or one that warped under the intense heat. These are learning experiences, chalked up to the unpredictable nature of fire. But for the most part, you've succeeded. Your workshop is now filled with a new batch of essential vessels. Cooking pots, water jars, storage containers, perhaps even some ceremonial pieces. Each one is a silent victory, a testament to your skill and dedication. It's the kind of satisfaction that comes from creating something with your own hands, something tangible and useful that will serve your community for years to come. Imagine the quiet clinking of the pots as you carefully place them on the ground, the sun glinting off their newly hardened surfaces. The mainstream historical fact here is that the successful firing of pottery was paramount for creating non-porous vessels, crucial for long-term storage of food and liquids, which directly contributed to population stability and the development of more complex societies in the Bronze Age. A quirky tidbit is that some ancient potters, especially those in areas prone to earthquakes, would intentionally create subtle, almost invisible, surface textures on their pots, believing these irregularities helped to dissipate stress and prevent cracks during minor ground tremors. It was a kind of ancient seismic engineering, perhaps. Historians still argue whether the transition from open-pit firing to enclosed kilns was a direct evolutionary step, driven by efficiency, or if cultural and ritualistic factors also played a significant role in adopting more controlled firing environments. But for you, the Bronze Age potter, it's just the quiet triumph of strong, resilient pottery, pulled from the belly of the cooled kiln. With your new batch of strong, fire-hardened pots now cooling in your workshop, you begin to consider their purpose. For you, the Bronze Age potter, your creations weren't just decorative items. They were the indispensable backbone of daily life. Your pottery played a crucial role in almost every aspect of existence. This is where your quiet work truly integrates into the fabric of the community. Imagine your pots in their various applications. The large, sturdy jars, perhaps some of those you painstakingly hand-built with the coil method, would be essential for storage. Think of them holding precious grain, perhaps barley or wheat, carefully harvested and stored for the long winter months. Or maybe they're filled with dried fruits, nuts, or pulses, essential provisions for a community dependent on seasonal harvests. Without your durable, waterproof vessels, much of this food would spoil, making sustained settlement and even population growth incredibly difficult. Your pots literally held the future of your village. You might also create larger amphorae, perhaps with sturdy handles, designed to transport and store liquids, water, olive oil, or even fermented beverages like beer or wine, if your region produced them. These vessels were the ancient world's equivalent of modern refrigerators and pantries, all rolled into one. Then there are the smaller, more refined pots, perhaps those you shaped on the wheel. These would be used for cooking and serving. Imagine them placed over a hearth, gently simmering a stew of vegetables and meat, the fire licking at their sturdy bases. Or perhaps a simple bowl, used for eating that gruel you had for breakfast or for holding fresh berries. Your pottery was designed to withstand the heat of the fire, the daily scrubbing, and the inevitable bumps and knocks of active use. Each piece had a specific function, born from the needs of a pre-metal, pre-plastic world. Beyond the purely utilitarian, your pots might also serve ceremonial or ritualistic purposes. Perhaps a particularly well-made vessel, with intricate decoration, would be used in a community gathering for offering libations to the gods or for special feasts. These pieces carried symbolic weight, a testament to the skill of the maker and the values of the community. Every pot, from the simplest bowl to the grandest storage jar, tells a silent story of survival, ingenuity, and connection to the earth. The mainstream historical fact here is that pottery was fundamental to the development of sedentary societies in the Bronze Age, enabling efficient food storage, cooking, and water management, which were crucial for supporting larger, more stable populations and complex social structures. A quirky tidbit you might consider is that some Bronze Age cooking pots show evidence of repair with natural resins or even early forms of stitching, indicating just how valuable these vessels were, with communities going to great lengths to extend their lifespan rather than simply discarding them when damaged. Historians still argue whether the widespread use of pottery primarily facilitated the transition to agriculture, or if the demands of agricultural surpluses spurred the innovation and widespread adoption of durable ceramic vessels. But for you, the Bronze Age potter, it's the quiet satisfaction of seeing your creations put to good, honest use, day after day. Beyond their immediate utility in daily life, your pots, and indeed your very craft, played a significant role in the Bronze Age world of trade and status. While you might live in a relatively self-sufficient community, no village was entirely isolated. Your pottery was not just about local consumption. It could become a commodity, a silent ambassador of your village's skill and resources. Imagine a scene at a bustling, albeit still quietly bustling, Bronze Age market. Perhaps it's a few days' journey away, a central gathering point where different communities meet to exchange goods. Your finest pots, carefully selected and packed to prevent breakage, are now laid out for inspection. They might be traded for goods your village lacks, perhaps rare metals like tin or copper, essential for bronze making, hence the name, Bronze Age. Or perhaps exotic foodstuffs, unique pigments, or even livestock. The quality of your pots, their strength, their finish, and their unique decorative motifs could make them highly desirable. A particularly well-fired pot might be sought after more than a merely functional one, indicating a certain level of craftsmanship that commanded a higher value. This trade wasn't just about economic exchange. It also conferred a subtle status upon you, the potter. While not a chieftain or a priest, you were a skilled artisan, a specialist whose craft was vital to the community's well-being and its ability to interact with the wider world. Your knowledge of clay, fire, and form was respected. You held a unique position, contributing to the wealth and stability of your people in a very tangible way. You might have apprentices, young villagers keen to learn the secrets of your craft, observing your every move, from digging the clay to stoking the kiln. This passing down of knowledge, from master to apprentice, was how your ancient skills endured for millennia. Some pots might even travel vast distances, becoming evidence of ancient trade routes. Imagine a vessel you made, perhaps a distinctive type of beaker, ending up hundreds of miles away, used by a completely different people. These objects, silent witnesses to ancient commerce, provide archaeologists today with invaluable clues about the connections and interactions between seemingly disparate Bronze Age cultures. It's a reminder that even in an age without maps or modern communication, goods, and with them, ideas, traveled extensively. And sometimes, you might even find an odd shell or a piece of obsidian embedded in the clay from a far-off land, perhaps left there by a trade partner, a tiny, accidental souvenir. The mainstream historical fact here is that pottery served as a significant trade commodity in the Bronze Age, its movement across regions providing crucial archaeological evidence for identifying ancient trade networks, cultural interactions, and the economic relationships between different settlements and societies. A quirky tidbit is that some archaeological finds suggest that certain pottery shapes or decorative styles became so popular through trade that they were widely imitated by potters in different regions, leading to interesting hybrid forms that blended local traditions with foreign influences. Historians still argue whether the primary drivers of pottery trade were economic necessity, e.g., lack of local clay or specific vessel types, or social prestige and the desire for exotic goods, suggesting a complex interplay of factors. But for you, the Bronze Age potter, it's the quiet knowledge that your creations, born of earth and fire, might journey far beyond your village, carrying a piece of your skill into the wider, ancient world. As the sun begins its slow descent, casting long, peaceful shadows across your workshop, you reflect on the quiet, enduring nature of your craft. The very act of transforming clay into durable pottery has created a profound and lasting connection to the human story. This is the enduring legacy of the Bronze Age potter. Think about it. While bronze tools and weapons eventually corrode, and wooden structures decay, pottery fragments, or sherds, are remarkably resilient. They endure for millennia, silent witnesses to civilizations long past. Every broken piece of a pot found by an archaeologist today carries a whisper of your life, your skill, and your community. These seemingly humble fragments are invaluable to us in the modern world. They tell us about ancient diets, from residues found inside, about trade routes, by tracing unique clay compositions, about social hierarchies, from the quality and type of vessels, and even about daily rituals. Your quiet, rhythmic work, performed millennia ago, continues to speak volumes across the ages. Your pots, which you handled with such care, are often the most common artifacts found at ancient sites. They are the breadcrumbs of history, leading us to understand how people lived, what they ate, how they cooked, and how they buried their dead. From the simplest cooking pot to the most elaborately decorated urn, each piece offers a tangible link to a world that feels so distant, yet was so fundamentally shaped by the very materials you mastered. It's a wonderfully grounding thought, isn't it? That your repetitive, focused work, performed in silence and solitude, created something that would outlast empires and become the very bedrock of our understanding of the past. It's a bit like leaving a quiet, permanent mark on the world, one unassuming pot at a time. And sometimes, you wonder if future generations will ever know the gentle patience that went into each piece. The mainstream historical fact here is that pottery is one of the most ubiquitous and durable types of archaeological evidence, providing unparalleled insights into ancient cultures, daily life, economic systems, and technological advancements, allowing modern historians and archaeologists to reconstruct the past. A quirky tidbit is that some Bronze Age pots found in tombs have been discovered to contain fossilized remnants of ancient meals, meticulously preserved by the clay, offering a direct taste, so to speak, of what people ate thousands of years ago, a truly intimate historical record. Historians still argue whether the aesthetic choices made by Bronze Age potters were purely functional and culturally driven, or if individual artistic expression played a larger role in shaping regional pottery styles than previously assumed, suggesting a nuanced blend of tradition and personal flair. But for you, the Bronze Age potter, as dusk settles over your workshop, it's the quiet satisfaction of a day's work well done, a contribution to a legacy you could never have fully comprehended. The last embers in the kiln have faded to a soft, barely perceptible glow. The air is still, the sounds of the village quieted by the approaching night. You take a final look at your finished pots, lined up like silent guardians, each one a testament to earth, water, fire, and human ingenuity. Your muscles ache gently, a comfortable tiredness from a day spent in quiet creation. The rhythmic breathing of sleep is calling now, the kind of deep, restorative rest that comes after honest, focused labor. Let the sounds of this ancient world fade away. Let the scent of clay and wood smoke drift from your mind. Your journey through the Bronze Age has come to its peaceful close. Rest now, knowing that even in the quietest corners of history, great things were made, enduring legacies forged, one gentle, thoughtful moment at a time. Drift softly into sleep, carried by the quiet hum of time.